The BBC studio was quiet in that heavy way only live TV can be, air thick with anticipation, lights set to a hush, every cable humming like a warning. Kamala Harris folded her hands once, then let them rest open on the armchair, a posture that read less like a politician and more like a witness ready to testify. "I am not done," she said, each word measured, unhurried, slipping past the microphone like a promise and a threat at the same time. The phrase ricocheted across feeds within minutes, trend lines spiked, pundits scrambled, and the comment sections fractured into neat little wars. Not done with what? The unfinished business of January wounds? The fractures in voting rights? Or the unresolved fight with the man who had turned American politics into a spectacle of grievance and bravado, Donald J. Trump? Her interviewer leaned in, asking the question carefully, as if approaching a skittish animal. Would she run again? Would she take the path back to the White House's South Lawn, past the cameras and the lawn chairs, back into the furnace of history? Harris didn't flinch. She spoke of work left incomplete, restoring guardrails, rebuilding trust, making the system feel like a system again, predictable, boring even, the way democracies should be when they're safe. But there was a glint, something steelier than nostalgia. She was done apologizing for being cautious. She was done letting the other side write the drama. If there was a rematch coming, she would not come to play heroine in someone else's script. Across town, Trump's camp watched from a suite lit like a casino, screens everywhere, all volume, the room thick with the sweet and sour tang of cold coffee and hot ambition. "I am not done," he mocked, lips curling. Good, he thought. Neither was he. The old battlegrounds were still mapped in his head, rallies like rolling thunder, small-town hangars becoming cathedrals, applause stacked like sandbags against the tide. He wanted the fight back on his stage, under his lights. And if Harris was promising unfinished chapters, he was promising fire to burn the pages. The studio's on-air sign went dark. But the sentence kept glowing. The moment the BBC interview ended, Washington felt different, like someone had struck flint against dry wood. Kamala Harris's words weren't just sound bites, they were a match, and the oxygen was everywhere. Cable networks dissected each syllable, pundits lined up to translate subtext into prophecy, and donors began texting operatives with the same 4 words, "Is she really back?" Meanwhile, in Mar-a-Lago, the ocean wind rattled the balcony doors as Donald Trump paced across the marble floor, a half-eaten cheeseburger sweating on the table beside his phone. He'd seen the clip a dozen times already, Kamala's calm defiance, her refusal to fade. "Not done," he muttered, mimicking her tone. "She's done when I say she's done." He turned to his aides, eyes sharp and restless. "Book me Fox, Newsmax, wherever, tomorrow morning. We're answering this." His team hesitated, they knew what answering meant. It never ended at an interview. It became a campaign. It became war. By morning, Trump was live on air. "Kamala Harris thinks she's got what it takes to lead this country again? Please. She had her chance and failed. Weak leadership, weak borders, weak everything." His hands sliced the air with every word, voice climbing toward that familiar crescendo of fury. "And now she wants to challenge me again? She better be ready. Because I'm not just running for president, I'm running through her." Kamala watched the segment later that evening, surrounded by aides who traded nervous glances. The rage, the bluster, it was all familiar, almost predictable. But something in her eyes hardened. "He still thinks this is his stage," she said, half to herself. "Let's see how he handles being interrupted." The room went silent. One aide finally whispered, "You mean?" Kamala smiled. A live confrontation. Not debate prep, not questions pre-screened. Just him, me, and the truth. Outside, the city skyline flickered under a restless sky. Somewhere between ambition and revenge, the next great American confrontation was being written, one camera angle at a time. The night after Trump's fiery broadcast, America split itself again, half mesmerized, half disgusted. On social feeds, clips from both camps collided like sparks in a storm. Hashtags became trenches, hashtag not done versus hashtag make America again. News anchors couldn't decide if it was politics or performance art anymore. Everyone had chosen a side, even those who swore they hadn't. Kamala's team gathered in a glass conference room at dawn. The city below still looked asleep, but the glow of phones and screens said otherwise. "If we're going to do this," said her campaign director, "we have to do it differently. No polished debates. No moderators who'll mute him." Kamala didn't blink. "Good," she said. "I don't want control. I want contrast." Contrast. That word lingered. Her calm against his chaos. Her precision against his volume. The strategist smiled. This was what they needed, not policy, but poetry in combat. America didn't tune in for balance, it tuned in for the blow. Meanwhile, at Mar-a-Lago, Trump was already rewriting the story. He told aides to dig into Kamala's record, find the weakest link, twist it, and amplify it. "She wants a confrontation," he said, pacing in his golf shoes. "We'll give her one live. Prime time. And she won't walk out smiling." The network smelled blood. Producers salivated at the idea, two titans of rhetoric, one stage, one truth, or two lies depending on who you asked. The negotiations began instantly: security, format, rules. But both sides agreed on one thing: no filters, no scripts, no soft questions. In the silence before dawn, Kamala stood by the window, watching the sky bloom pink over the Capitol. Somewhere out there, millions were waiting for someone to prove that decency could still win. Others wanted a spectacle. She knew Trump would deliver both. And that was the plan. The date was locked in within 48 hours. CNN called it the unfiltered showdown. Fox called it the reckoning. Every outlet, from YouTube streamers to political veterans, circled the night in red ink. It was no longer just a confrontation, it was an event, a collision of two Americas inside one broadcast. The venue, the newly rebuilt Freedom Forum Auditorium in Washington, D.C., a space that once hosted think tanks and lectures, now wired with more cameras than a movie set. Technicians spent days testing angles, mic levels, and lighting that could capture tension as art. There would be no teleprompters. No editing. Every stumble, every glance, every heartbeat would go live to an audience of nearly 200 million people. Behind the scenes, Kamala's team rehearsed not lines, but breathing. "He'll interrupt," one advisor warned. "He'll bait you, insult you, try to make you angry. Don't meet him there. Make him climb to you." Kamala just smiled. "I don't need to climb anywhere. I'm already standing." In Florida, Trump's camp was very different: chaotic, loud, overflowing with energy and ego. His speechwriter tried to prepare remarks, but Trump tore them in half. No scripts. No notes. They want Trump, they'll get Trump. His confidence was real, and terrifyingly familiar. He thrived in noise. He ruled in unpredictability. His strategy wasn't to win the argument, it was to break the rhythm of reason itself. When the night came, the crowd outside the venue stretched for blocks. Protesters and supporters screamed across barricades, flags waving like weapons. Helicopters circled. Security dogs sniffed cables and cases. The air felt like thunder just before it strikes, thick, restless, electric. Inside, as the countdown began, Kamala stood under the lights and adjusted her earpiece. On the other side of the stage, Trump adjusted his tie and smirked. Two podiums. One nation on edge. The moderator's voice echoed, "Ladies and gentlemen. Vice President Kamala Harris. President Donald J. Trump." And as the applause thundered, the world held its breath, waiting for the spark to become a storm. The first few minutes were civil, too civil. Both sides exchanged practiced greetings, and for a heartbeat, it looked almost diplomatic. But the illusion shattered the moment Trump leaned into the microphone. "Kamala," he began, drawing out her name like an accusation, "you had 4 years to prove you could lead. What did America get? Inflation, chaos, weakness. You call that leadership?" His grin widened as the crowd reacted, half cheers, half boos. Kamala didn't flinch. "What America got," she said, her tone sharp as glass, "was survival, after the chaos you left behind." The words hit like a clean strike. Trump's eyes narrowed. The moderator tried to intervene, but it was too late, the format had already collapsed. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every micro-expression, every bead of sweat. The two didn't need policy notes, they spoke the language of dominance and defiance. "You talk about chaos?" Trump shot back. "You created it. You and your woke, weak administration, turning America into a joke." Kamala tilted her head, calm but lethal. "A joke? The only joke is pretending your ego ever served this country." The crowd gasped. Even the moderator went silent. Trump took a step forward, his voice dropping to that dangerous growl familiar to anyone who'd seen him cornered. "You think you can lecture me? You wouldn't last 1 week in the real world without hiding behind a teleprompter." Her reply came like a hammer. "And you wouldn't last 1 day without blaming someone else." The audience erupted, half applause, half outrage. On Twitter, the moment was already trending worldwide. Commentators called it the line that cut through the noise. For the first time in the night, Trump didn't smile. Kamala had struck deeper than expected, not just at his policies, but at his myth. The crowd could feel it. The debate had stopped being about politics. It had become something far older, power meeting accountability in its purest form. And the night was just beginning. The air in the auditorium was vibrating now. Cameras captured faces in the audience, some furious, some ecstatic, all hypnotized. This wasn't a debate anymore, it was a battle for control of the narrative, for the soul of the country itself. Trump leaned forward, palms gripping the podium. His tone dropped lower, quieter, more dangerous. "You want to talk about accountability, Kamala? Let's talk about Hunter. Let's talk about the deals your people made while pretending to clean up mine." The crowd roared. Kamala didn't move, but the flicker in her eyes said she'd expected it. "You want to talk corruption," she said, her voice suddenly rising. "Fine. Let's talk about your foundation. Your hush money. The documents you swore didn't exist. You turned the Oval Office into a business deal, and now you want another shot at selling the country?" Trump slammed his hand on the podium. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Lies. Pure lies." But Kamala didn't back down. "Truth hurts, doesn't it?" she said evenly. "You can shout all you want, but the facts don't disappear just because you say so. America saw who you were when the lights were brightest." The audience gasped again. Even the moderator looked rattled. For a split second, Trump's composure cracked. His jaw tightened, his voice trembled between fury and disbelief. "You think you're tough," he spat. "You're just a puppet for people who hate this country." Kamala took one step closer, her tone icy calm. "If loving justice means hating corruption, then maybe they're right." The silence after that line was deafening. No one clapped. No one shouted. Every camera zoomed in, recording what felt like history folding in real time. Backstage, advisors from both sides argued over how far to let it go. The producers whispered through earpieces, should they cut to commercial? But they didn't. They couldn't. The world was watching something raw, unfiltered, and terrifyingly real. For the first time, Trump looked like he wasn't steering the show. Trump's face turned the color of his signature tie. He had been cornered before, but never quite like this. Millions were watching live, but it wasn't just the cameras he felt pressing against him, it was the shifting weight of public opinion. He could almost hear it, like the low hum of an engine about to stall. Kamala's words had cut through the noise and landed in that rare space where silence becomes judgment. He adjusted his tie again, a reflex he'd repeated 1,000 times before, then leaned closer to the mic. You think you're some kind of hero? You and your Hollywood buddies, pretending to care while this country burns. His words hit sharp, but his tone betrayed the slightest edge of desperation. I built America's success with my bare hands. You're just standing in the ruins I left behind. Kamala's eyes didn't waver. You didn't build America, she said quietly, you built a brand, and now it's bankrupt. The crowd's reaction was instant. A thunderclap of noise, cheers colliding with jeers. Even Trump's supporters couldn't deny it, she had landed the kind of line that echoed. Then came the moment that changed everything. Kamala didn't stop. You talk about power, she continued, but power without purpose is corruption. And you've been selling corruption as if it were patriotism. You made hate fashionable, lies profitable, and division your business model. Trump's hand tightened around the podium. He tried to interrupt, but the audience overpowered him. The chant began small, somewhere in the upper rows, enough. Enough. And spread like wildfire through the hall. Cameras panned across faces shouting, clapping, crying. Somewhere backstage, producers shouted for control. The moderator tried to speak, but the debate had dissolved into chaos. Trump raised his voice above the noise, shouting, I am America. Kamala's response was ice-cold, deliberate, final. No, Donald. America is what survives you. The words hit like thunder. And for the first time in his career, maybe his life, Trump had no comeback. The chaos didn't fade, it evolved. The audience that once came to see a political duel was now witnessing something closer to a reckoning. Trump's usual rhythm, the jabs, the bravado, the applause lines, had lost their power. He was speaking, but people weren't reacting the same way. For the first time, the former president's words seemed to echo in a room not entirely his. He raised his voice, desperate to reclaim command. You don't understand strength. You don't understand leadership, he barked, pointing toward Kamala, who stood motionless, every gesture measured like a blade waiting for its target. She leaned forward slightly, speaking in a tone that felt less like rebuttal and more like revelation. Strength isn't shouting louder, Donald. It's standing firm when no one claps for you. You've mistaken fear for respect your entire life. The crowd froze. Some gasped, others stood. Even the cameras seemed to draw closer, zooming into the expression on Trump's face, half shock, half fury. For years, he'd faced adversaries who played his game, who tried to outshout him, out-insult him. Kamala was different. She wasn't trying to win the argument, she was dismantling the very foundation of it. The moderator's voice wavered through the static. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's bring this back to. But Trump wasn't listening. You're weak, he hissed. Everything about your administration was weak. You let the world walk all over us. Kamala didn't blink. You didn't want strength, Donald, you wanted obedience. And that's the difference between you and America. We don't kneel to bullies. The eruption that followed wasn't mere applause, it was release. Years of tension, frustration, and disbelief poured out of the audience like thunder. Trump tried to interrupt, shouting something lost in the roar, but Kamala's next line silenced everything again. You talk about greatness, but true greatness doesn't need chaos to survive. That was the moment the tide turned, not through anger, but through calm precision. Every news network would replay that clip, frame by frame. It wasn't a debate anymore. It was a declaration. And the country, whether ready or not, was listening. By dawn, the debate had transformed into something much larger than a political event. Every network replayed the confrontation between Trump and Kamala from a dozen angles. Hashtags like #TheRealCoward and #StandForTruth trended globally within hours. What began as a clash of ideology had evolved into a symbolic war, one that tested America's pulse in real time. In diners across the Midwest, truck stops, college lounges, and suburban kitchens, people replayed that same moment, Kamala's calm defiance meeting Trump's fury. For some, it was validation, a long-awaited reckoning against years of arrogance. For others, it was blasphemy, proof that the system was rigged against the man they believed had spoken for the forgotten. But beneath the noise, something deeper stirred. Polls shifted almost overnight. Commentators who once tread carefully now spoke with open conviction. This wasn't just a debate, one analyst said. It was the night America saw the emperor without his armor. Meanwhile, Trump's campaign machine roared into crisis mode. Advisors worked overtime, pushing statements, blaming media bias, spinning the narrative into one of victimhood. "They want to silence strength," he tweeted at dawn. "But I'll never stop fighting for you." His base rallied, flooding social media with defenses. Yet, something in the tone had changed. It felt less triumphant, more defensive. Kamala, on the other hand, said almost nothing. Her silence became its own weapon. A single post on her official account read, "Leadership isn't about volume. It's about vision." Within an hour, it had more retweets than any of Trump's posts that morning. And across the digital landscape, one question echoed louder than the rest: had America finally seen enough? By the end of that week, the storm had grown into a cultural reckoning. The debate wasn't just a trending topic anymore, it was a mirror, reflecting everything America had become: divided, exhausted, and desperate for authenticity. News anchors, late-night hosts, and even comedians dissected every syllable from that night. The country was no longer asking who won, it was asking what now. In private circles, Trump's advisors whispered about the irreversible damage. His inner circle fractured, half urging him to double down, the other begging him to step back before things got worse. "They turned you into the villain," one strategist warned. Trump's response was cold, detached: "Villains win if they scare enough people." But this time, even he didn't sound convinced. Kamala's approval numbers surged to unprecedented levels. But beyond the politics, something intangible had shifted, a sense that truth, decency, and composure had momentarily triumphed over spectacle. It wasn't about party lines anymore, it was about fatigue from chaos, from noise, from fear. Across the nation, families who had stopped talking to each other because of politics began sharing quiet conversations again. College students debated leadership over coffee instead of shouting over slogans. For the first time in years, the air felt a little less toxic. That moment between Kamala and Trump, her calm versus his chaos, became symbolic. It was clipped into documentaries, replayed in classrooms, even quoted in sermons. "America is what survives you," she had said, and the line turned into a mantra for a generation craving renewal. In the end, Trump never admitted defeat. He launched new rallies, new grievances, new targets. But something fundamental had cracked. The myth of invincibility that had fueled his rise had finally been punctured, not by scandal or policy, but by truth. As the cameras faded, Kamala's words lingered in the national consciousness like an echo that refused to die. "You can't bully the future," she had said. "It always arrives, whether you're ready or not." And with that, America stepped forward, wounded, divided, but perhaps, for the first time in years, awake. What happened tonight wasn't just a debate, it was a turning point. For years, fear and division tried to own the stage. But when truth walked in, the noise fell silent. Kamala didn't just challenge Trump, she challenged what we've become. And maybe, just maybe, this was the moment America remembered who it really is. Studio microphone, stay with us, because this story is far from over.